Welcome to Trucks. You know, one thing I've been getting a lot of requests for lately is a really cool build-up on a Dodge. And that is a valid request because these things have a ton of potential. But I'm not talking about a brand new Dodge. Why? Well, because number one, any new truck is really expensive. And number two, most people don't want to mess with a new truck because they're afraid of voiding their warranty. So picking up something that's a few years old, like this 99 short bed four-wheel drive, is a smart way to go. Now, the reason is you can still get these in really good shape. They're tough, they're reliable. This is by far the most popular body style that Dodge has ever done, and they're affordable. Yeah, pretty much the perfect project vehicle. And trust me, when we get done tweaking on this thing, it's still going to be cheaper and a lot cooler than anything you're going to find on a showroom floor. Okay, the direction for this build-up. Now, most of you know that years ago, Dodge made pretty much the ultimate hardcore off-road truck. It was called the Power Wagon. It was tough, rugged, almost indestructible, and slow. You could almost outrun one on a good day. Now, in the 70s, Dodge went another direction. They came out with the Lil Red Express. This was a two-wheel drive street truck that, according to the magazines of the day, was the fastest production vehicle at the time. But it wasn't much for towing or hauling or working. Well, what we're going to do is something that Dodge, Chevy, Ford, none of those guys have thought to do. We're going to take the awesome off-road ability of the Power Wagon and combine it with the street performance of the Lil Red Express, and we are going to build a vehicle called the Lil Red Wagon. Well, you know, for grown-ups. Okay, the first thing that we're going to deal with on this project is the performance. Now, this truck has a 5.2-liter V8, strong, healthy, just not strong enough. So we're going to help it out with a supercharger from ATI ProCharger. Now, you can see this kit is complete. It's got all the hoses, all the tubing. The tubing is powder coated. All the aluminum is polished. You've got all your bracketry, all your hardware, an auxiliary fuel system, even the bracket to mount everything in. Now, what makes this kit really unique, though, is you have a belt-driven, polished centrifugal supercharger and an intercooler. Now, real quick, a supercharger is basically an air compressor. It compresses air and that builds boost. That's good. It also builds heat. That is bad. So that hot blast of air comes out, goes through the intercooler, and it's cooled back down. That gives you a cool, dense blast of air, and that's where you get your power. So if you want the most power you can get out of your supercharger, you really need to intercool it. First, we're going to get rid of all the stock air intake system. And install the new intake hat. Then modify the PCV hose. Next, we need to make room for that supercharger, which means off comes the factory belt and tensioner. Here you go, Mo. Now we are ready to start putting on the good stuff. And you don't want to do that on an old nasty engine. So after a little bit of cleanup and some paint, we're going to start by putting on this bracket. And it just bolts in place where the stock tensioner went. Now, of course, this holds your supercharger. You got a new tensioner and adjustment, and that's all nice. But what's really unique are the little details. Notice you have a hose clamp here to hold this air conditioning line out of the way. You have hardware to remount your coil down in between these brackets. Now, it's these kind of details that make this kit a really nice install. All right, that takes care of that. When we come back, supercharger goes on. Hey, welcome back to Trucks. The project that I'm working on today is called the Lil Red Wagon, and the subject is this 99 Dodge. Now, what we're doing is putting on an ATI ProCharger to get some serious power out of this engine. Now, like I said before the break, the ProCharger is a centrifugal supercharger, and it's probably the easiest part of this install because it just bolts onto the bracketry that we put on earlier. All right, I have all the hoses and tubing assembled, ready to be set into place, but first, I got something I want to show you. This is called a surge valve, and what it does is release pressure. For example, you're driving down the road, you got your foot buried in it, and you're building lots of boost, right? Well, as soon as you take your foot off the gas, those throttle plates close and all that boost has nowhere to go. That's where this thing comes in. It opens, and it allows that pressure to be channeled back into the intake tube before the supercharger so it can be used again. Without something like this, something's going to blow, and that's never a good thing. Unless, of course, it's somebody else's truck, and then it's awesome. The intercooler is the next piece to go on, and it mounts under the front of the truck, behind the bumper, between the frame rails, up here underneath the radiator. Now to put it on, you have mounting brackets. This one bolts to an existing hole. This one, you just have to drill one hole. With your intercooler in place, just hook up the rest of your tubing. Now make sure that you check and double check that your clamps are tight, because if they're not, you're going to find out real quick when you start this thing up. The last thing we're going to put on is this auxiliary fuel system. Now, before you go, oh no, you mean I have to take the gas tank down? No, it's a lot easier than that. You can relax. This is a supplemental fuel pump that works in conjunction with your stock fuel pump to give you the extra fuel that you're going to need. Now, it just mounts inside the inner frame rail using the supplied bracketry and hardware, and then it just plugs into your stock fuel line. Now, this little guy here is an electronic fuel management unit. This controls the amount of fuel that comes out of this pump. This mounts inside the cab, and the cool thing is it is completely adjustable. So you can really fine-tune your air-fuel ratio, make that engine run the way it's supposed to. All right, I'm going to put this stuff on. You take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about exhaust. Welcome back to Trucks and our project, Lil Red Wagon. Well, we're breathing some new life into this late model Dodge. Now the supercharger's on, the intercooler's in place. We've got some serious air blowing into this thing. Now we need to get some air blowing out. That means headers. Come on. This is a set of stainless steel shorty headers that we got from JBA. Now you add these to a supercharger, you better hold on. They've got everything that you would expect from a quality set of headers. Nice mandrel bends, thick flanges, high temperature coating. The best part is, though, is you can bolt these on and still use your stock exhaust system. Of course, we're not going to do that, but you could if you wanted to. Now, while we're at it, we also got these power cables from JBA. This will make sure we have plenty of fire flow into that engine, too. All right, with the new headers on and the plug wires in place, we're pretty much done under the hood. But what about that hood? We're not going to leave that old nasty stock hood on there, are we? No, come on. Now, I wanted something that was cool and had some style because the Little Red Express had some style. That meant a call to Keystone Restyling Products for one of their good hoods. Now, the first thing that really grabs you about this hood is that big AAR CUDA style scoop blended right into the center. Yeah, you Mopar guys know what I'm talking about. Now, this scoop is fully functional. Air goes in here, goes down into the air box, and then into your stock air inlet. The hood is also fiberglass, fully finished top and on the back side, so it's going to look good when you open the hood. And putting it in is just utilizing your stock hinges, latches, grill. All you have to do is get this thing painted and put it on. And putting it on goes like that. Okay, maybe not quite that quick, but installing a Keystone hood is one of the easiest installs that you'll do. And the difference it makes in the look of your truck, that is huge. Look at that. That is just cool. All right, back to the exhaust system. Now, the Lil Red Express had a very unique exhaust system. It had dual stacks that ran it behind the cab. So, I wanted something unique for the Lil Red Wagon, but you know, we can't use stacks, so it wouldn't look right. But what we can use are these polished stainless steel tips from Style & Concepts. Now, these are made to go right through the body of the rig, and they're designed to where this outer shell doesn't get hot, so you're not going to buckle your paint. Now, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, now wait a minute, if you're going to bring them through the body, that means you need to cut. Yeah, that's right. We are going to cut two great big holes right in the side of the bed, one on each side. And trust me, it's going to look really cool. Then just bolt in the tip, and that's it. Now, not only does this look really good, but it's different. You're not going to see this on just every truck running down the road, and that's cool. It also really cleans up the back of this truck because now I can get rid of these pipes that are hanging down underneath. We'll be back after this. You know, the world of trucks is pretty interesting because there's a lot of vehicles that are built for a specific purpose, like a cement mixer or a fire engine. And one of the most unique is the wrecker. You know, the truck that's got the little crane in the back of it. But the wrecker didn't just spring into existence one day by accident. No, it evolved into existence because of accidents. Believe it or not, the wrecker originated in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the brainchild of Ernest Walter Holmes Sr., because those crazy southern drivers kept driving off the road and down in the deep valleys of the Smoky Mountains, and they needed to have some way to get them back up the hill. Starting with a 1913 Cadillac touring car, Holmes cut the back out, made a bed, and installed a twin-boom wrecker assembly. And in 1916, the wrecker was born as a vehicle with the sole purpose of salvaging wrecked vehicles. In 1918, the design was upgraded and patented and simply called the 485. Why? Because that's what it cost, $485 without the truck. The earliest example of this is this 1913 Locomobile, and it looks more like a carriage than a truck. Now, the Locomobile was not made for very long, probably because the steering wheel is on the wrong side. But we do know that it had an 82 horsepower six-cylinder in it. That was a lot of engine for 1913. Of course, when you think of a wrecker, you naturally think trucks, like this 1929 model AA Ford. But since not everybody made trucks in the 30s, converting a big limo into a tow truck was very common. like this 1929 Packard that started out life hauling rich people to fancy parties and ended up pulling rich people out of ditches when they couldn't make it home from their fancy parties. Or this 29 Chrysler 510 Coupe that was modified with a bed and crane. Now all it needs is a Hemi. As things got heavier and the jobs got tougher, Holmes came out with the W35. Now this had much heavier twin booms, and the cable drums were turned by PTO from the engine. When World War II broke out, the military talked Holmes into adding outboard legs for stability, and the mighty W45 was born, some of which are still in use today all around the world. As times continued to change, people began to demand damage-free towing. So new designs were developed, like this 1974 Cradle Snatcher that lifts your vehicle with straps to avoid damage. This was the forerunner to the damage-free towing systems that are in use today. Now, I bet you're wondering where you can go to see all this really cool stuff. I thought you'd never ask. The International Towing and Recovery Museum in Chattanooga not only has these actual wreckers, but it also chronicles other things associated with this unique profession. Let's face it, if you're a gearhead, you have a special spot for a wrecker. They're cool, they're strong, they're unique. Heck, most of us find our next projects hanging on the back of them. Now, hopefully this gives you an insight to the unique history of the wrecker. The fact that they have their own museum dedicated to them should tell you something. You know, one area that most off-road rigs are really lacking in is in the emergency brake. That's because they're usually such a hassle to hook up once you've lifted the truck and got it ready to go wheeling, that most guys don't want to mess with it and they just leave them unhooked. Not the smartest thing to do. An answer to that problem comes from high-angle driveline in what they call the drive shaft emergency brake. Now basically, this is a rotor that bolts to this flange that comes out of the transfer case. Then your drive shaft continues this direction down to the rear end. Then you've got this bracket that bolts to the transfer case, and you have a mechanical brake that pinches down on the rotor, giving you a nice, solid, reliable emergency brake that you can really depend on. This is cheap insurance, and you can only get it from Jesse at High Angle Driveline. That's it for today. More Lil Red Wagon next week. We'll see you then.